Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Grabfelder. Welcome back to EA Zoom for part 2 of our 2025 forecast. Today, we're joined by Marty Dixon, Redwood Naragon, Michelle Dench, and Jordyn Smith, and Sue Hilliard. So we'll start with Marty.
Everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is an old lecture that I'm going to pull from. And it's an old lecture. Let me get it up and running here.
It's not full, it's not full screen yet.
I'm trying to get it full screen. It's not gonna do that for me. Just one moment. Okay, hi. So my name's Marty Dixon, and I'm going to be pulling slides from this lecture or this presentation that Redwood and Jordyn and I put together last June, and it still applies. So this is where I'm going to start, and this is what the discussion was about, and we'll just kind of take it from there and update it. Of course, today is January 13th, 2025. So here we go. So here's my first slide, and as you can see, I'm just going to quote this this doctor here. His name is Zach Bush. He's a very enlightened being. He's a biologist, immunologist, a geneticist, and humanitarian. And he had this quote. He said, bear with me just a moment. We are sitting in, I can't see the whole, oh darn it. I can't see the screen.
Marty, I can read it for you because I can see it.
Yes, read it for me, Jordyn.
It says, we are sitting in an energetic moment in this great universe. If we choose to step up and expand that lens, open up the aperture and expand the truth of what it means to have been given life in this galaxy, on this planet, we will stabilize not just our planet, but the universe. Zach Bush.
Thank you. I might call on you again, Jordyn. Thank you so much, because my screen is cropped. So we are a galactic universe, and we are going to be talking geocentrically about the Earth-centered view of things. But one thing that kind of prodded this slide was I was texting Redwood, and I was watching a presentation of his about 2 weeks ago called Coming Together. And in it, he mentioned that he was reading an article about astronomy versus astrology. I'm paraphrasing for him, but somebody commenting that astrology wasn't real, it wasn't valid, it wasn't acceptable, and I'm here to say it is, because you have to experience it to understand that, and it's enlightening, and it really is real, and it really does work. So I'm going to go back in history just a little bit here. Just one moment, bear with me. Let me get my speaker gallery. Trying to get my screen to work here, but bear with me, folks. Well, I've blocked myself again. Oh well. And I'm just going to say that Valley Forge was the 1777 to 1778 winter encampment of the Continental Army led by General George Washington. They were holdouts against the British occupation in Philadelphia under the most harsh conditions, resulting in thousands of American soldier deaths due to conditions and disease. But an eventual British withdrawal and the end to the protracted war resulted. On the National Memorial Arch that was completed in 1917, Washington's words read, "Naked and starving as they are, we cannot enough admire the incomparable patience and fidelity of the soldiery." In President Biden's first re-election campaign speech of January 2024 of last year, at Valley Forge, he was passionate about our nation's constitutional legacy. He said, "We're the only nation in the history of the world built on an idea, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. It's an idea declared in the Constitution, declared in a way that we viewed everybody as equal and that they should be treated equally throughout their lives. And my main point is we've never fully lived up to that. We've come a long way away from that. I'm paraphrasing, but we have a long way to go, but we've never lost hope of that idea. We've never walked away from that idea. And that's really important. That's the foundation of what I have to say today, is our Constitution, and all men and women are created equal. Here's the chart of Valley Forge. I'll just show it very quickly. Bear with me just a moment. Try to get my side to work here. And this is from 1778, the end of the protracted war, Revolutionary War. And you can see that, let's see if my pointer will work. Bear with me a moment. Let's see if I get that to work. Nope. Oh well, we'll do without it. But as you can see, the Pluto is in 0 degrees Aquarius. And I'll go to my next slide. It's not going to the next slide. Don't know why it doesn't advance. Okay. And as you can see, the story of Pluto's ingression to Aquarius, it first ingressed to Aquarius in March of 2023. And as you can see, that there we have Pluto 0 degrees Aries or Aquarius. So we're back to where we were during the time of the Revolutionary War, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, and when Washington claimed victory at the end of the war in 1778. We're at that time again with Pluto in Aquarius 0 degrees. And so we've come 248 and a half years. We're almost at 249 years since that time with a Pluto return. And so, like I said, Pluto first ingressed to Aquarius in March of 2023, then again on January of 2024, and then again, finally, it ingressed and stayed in Aquarius in November 19th, 2024. And I just want to point out here too, that it's important. I try to elucidate and educate. That's what I was trying to say. And I try to show people what I can, because I think that leads to greater understanding and cooperation and truth. And so the transiting nodes of Pluto actually has, the nodes in Capricorn in Cancer have actually been there since 500 AD. And they will remain transiting through Capricorn, South Node, Cancer, North Node until 2500 AD. So the nodes, the planetary nodes of Pluto, and take about 2,000 years to cycle, to transit and return to Pluto in Aquarius. And real quickly, Pluto in Aquarius, some people confuse Pluto in Aquarius with the age of Aquarius. So let me just say very quickly, let me see if I can get this up here, bear with me a moment. So let me just say very quickly that Pluto in Aquarius is about a 20-year span, and it heralds the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius is actually around 2,160 years. And that's a mathematical computation, but it works pretty well. Neptune's north node is in Leo, and its south node is in Aquarius. And so we can speak to the symbolism of that and what that harkens back to in terms of the age of Leo and the last age of Aquarius. The age of Leo was between 10,900 BC to 8,740 BC. It was the time the pyramids were built in ancient Egypt. It really computes. If you do the math, you can see how this all starts to add up, and it really does compute. Jeffrey had said that the average age the average span of an age is roughly 2,000 years, give or take a few hundred years. So we compute that mathematically to about 2,160 years. The coming age of Aquarius then would be mathematically 2060 AD to 4220 AD, but that's just a mathematical computation. We are in the inception of the age of Aquarius right now. Get back to where I need to be here, bear with me. Okay. Pluto has an orbit of between 248 to 249 years. And I'm trying to find my screen. Just a moment, folks. Okay. It last ingressed to Aquarius, as we said, in November of 2024. Pluto entered Aquarius in March. We already said that. Okay. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was between 1778 and 1798, and the Revolutionary War actually was ongoing from about 1773 to about 1798. It was that long, but the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. And the war ended, I believe, in 1778. 1765, okay, war took place between 1765 and 1783, so it's much longer than I realized. 13, okay, when 13 of Britain's North American colonies rejected its imperial rule. So it's much longer than I realized. I thought it was 7 years, it was 13. And the protests began in opposition to taxes levied without representation. And this is going to maybe sound familiar or parallel to today's times. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776, and the signing of the Declaration will be 249 years old by our July 4th, 2025, a full Pluto return. The Treaty of Paris was signed by the U.S. and British representatives on September 3rd, 1783, ending the War of the American Revolution and the United States of America. And that was done in the most heroic and brave and remarkable way with George Washington and his band of soldiers. Pluto is also a planet of polarization, and in Aquarius, this polarization can look like political ideologies that the polarization of ideologies that can occur with the collective evolutionary intent to balance excesses of power and direct that power back into the hands of the people. So basically, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is right now we have tremendous upheaval and revolutionary forces at hand. There's no doubt about it. And it can go any way depending on the will of the people and who stands up and who gives up their voice and what we need is a hero. We need someone to stand up and say, this is what our nation was predicated on, and this is how we need to proceed, and this is how we need to shore up the Constitution and perhaps change the language or enforce the language. And we need some kind of a strong person to take hold, and others will follow. Okay. And here's the notes to Pisces and Virgo, and if anybody else wants to talk about that, please go right ahead. Redwood, would you like to talk about this?
I had a couple thoughts on it. Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. Thank you. So, I knew that the nodes were going into Pisces Virgo, and I was driving up to Seattle when it was going to happen and on a little day trip. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then yesterday was the first full day. They were in Pisces Virgo. And at the end of the day, I realized that some very interesting things happened that were very Pisces Virgo. And so I'm just going to share a couple stories around that and then some ideas around what this means collectively. The microcosm also reflects the macrocosm here. But yeah, one thing that happened was I told my I told my partner that I wanted to read The Second Coming of Christ together. This is a 2-volume set that Paramahansa Yogananda wrote, where what he said was that it was by the will of Babaji and Jesus Christ that Jesus Christ came to him in physical form and like redictated the meaning of the New Testament. It's a pretty insane book, and I have it, but I haven't read it. And just kind of spontaneously with this nodal switch, I had suggested we read it together as a an ongoing spiritual development thing to do. And so that happened. I was like, oh, that's really interesting timing that happened on. And another thing that happened I thought was really interesting was a good friend came to me with a story that was like someone was basically purporting that there's this great scandal with a great saint. And it kind of put into doubt that, this, like, where you put into question, like, is this person who they were? And it tested faith. And it kind of caused me to step back. And I was like, what? I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense, And so it was very interesting because I think like the whole mutable cross and the Pisces Virgo axes could, like, on one hand, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are, feeling this call to go deeper into what their definition of spirituality is with that Pisces North node. And then, on that Virgo South node piece, there's a reliving of, there's going to be a reliving of crises of all kinds of variety, but also there's this kind of piece of, I guess, like doubt and questioning things. And I mean, things should be questioned and analyzed, of course. But I just thought that was really fascinating timing with that. So that was my little kind of story of also the right now on the planet, the greatest peaceful gathering on the planet ever is happening. There's 400 million people coming together at the confluence of the 3 rivers in India, the Kumbh Mela. So that's kind of fascinating timing that it happens to be with this Pisces Virgo switch this year. But I guess it's fascinating because like we're ending this 14 years of Neptune in Pisces, and then Saturn in Pisces. And even though we're shifting, I'll come back to this. I'm just going to stop in a second. But just like the point is, even though we're shifting into all of this air and fire, and Saturn and Neptune are going into Aries, but then we have the nodes shift into Pisces Virgo. And of course, Neptune and Saturn are going to go back into Pisces later in the year. So that's where I was kind of thinking how, it's that classic thing where we have a foot in the past and a foot in the future, or kind of like we're living in 2 different worlds where we're on the cusp of this great acceleration and this time period of change. And then all this waves of reliving a lot of stuff is also happening. So I'm just going to leave it at that for this moment and hand it off. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in. I've been tracking this whole nodal shift for months and feeling it quite strongly, especially in the sectors of faith, religion, spirituality, basically anywhere where we stick our toes in order to find ultimate meaning, purpose, I think are going to be deeply affected. Because human beings are meaning-making creatures, and whether our meaning-making vehicle is astrology or the Bible or Ram Dass lectures or psilocybin or whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. The soul, essentially, the soul work of this particular time period is to look at the evolutionary meaning of our lives. And I think it's interesting that on the ingress, we had a moon in Gemini squaring the nodal axis, which is a signature of a skip step. So we have a skip step where the resolution node is the north node in Pisces, where Neptune is the ruler of that node and is with the north node, and where we could say the opposition point, which would be Sagittarius of the moon, I'm speaking, the opposition point is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter's also in Gemini, and we've been with the Jupiter and Gemini dynamics for the last mostly the last year, really. And then soon we're gonna see Uranus moving into Gemini this year. So the Gemini duality, and of course, I always think of Pisces and Virgo as like the victim perpetrator axis when we're talking about crisis of evolution. And we don't know which end we're on. Are we the victim of the patriarchy, or are we the perpetrator of, are we the savior or the Messiah? Which are we in our story, in our own narrative? And I had a really interesting experience yesterday after I realized that the nodes had switched. I could really observe how even the quality of the emotional challenges that I was facing that day all had this quality of it being indiscernible whether I was the victim or the perpetrator, right? And that to me is kind of the nature of even what we saw with the political, landscape, and with the ultimate choices that were made by the larger collective, right? I would say the larger collective is making the choices in the world when it comes to religion, when it comes to institutions. And we haven't yet seen what it's like to have Pluto in Aquarius long enough to where the social collective is also making its own formative decisions. But I think irrelevant of who's making decisions, that Gemini moon to me squaring the nodal axis indicates a process through these next 18 months, especially as the eclipses activate the nodes. That's going to be a heightened period of where this process of the duality gets activated by the skip step. And ultimately, what will happen for us from an evolutionary perspective will depend on the meaning that we make of it. It will completely depend. And I was driving home from the doctor's today. My son asked me a question, which I thought was a great story to tell. He said, "Mom, I wish that I lived in a world where everything was free and we could just have what we needed." And I was like, oh, isn't that funny? Because that's kind of the world that God created. The natural world, everything is given freely. Oxygen, food, water, shelter, life is given freely. You didn't pay for the life that you were given. Somebody else gave it to you. Everything is an act of conscious generosity from our Creator. And even our gifts, our talents, our expressions of creativity are gifts. They aren't something that we made. Even if we have to develop a skill, let's say, in order to have them, that is something that's given to us through time and through challenge and through test. And I said, it's so funny because the concept of money is something that somebody made up. And we have to work very hard to keep making up reasons to make something that someone made up. But so many people are living in a reality that was made up to begin with. That is why it doesn't really make sense to a lot of people. And it was just a funny conversation to have with an 11-year-old. Granted, he's like exploring what he wants to do with his life when he grows up, But I do think that this is an expression of this skip step, right? From an emotional evolutionary perspective, each of us live with a duality that exists inside of our minds constantly. that will require us to face what we believe and what we don't believe, what we make meaning of and what we don't care to what is not meaningful to us. And that to me will be the ultimate expression of what we do as a collective and ultimately what happens from a Pluto and Aquarius perspective. So I think that's a good place for me to stop.
Thank
I
you,
have
Michelle.
something to add to this for
Yes.
sure. In the ingress chart for this that is for Greenwich, I will say that Libra is on the ascendant. All of the angles are paradoxical and they're all at 0 degrees. And the reason why I bring this up is because when the nodes switched and there was the ingress into Virgo Pisces, that south node in Libra was at 0 degrees before it went to 29 Virgo. And to me, what that was indicative of, especially with Venus in Pisces at the time, it's still in Pisces, was the seeds that were planted 18 months ago are now being brought and exposed into the light of day in order for us to find solutions in a very Virgo-like way. But that moon squaring the nodal axis is about a choice. There's free will. And the moon, in mundane astrology is the people. So it's really up to the people. The other thing that I wanted to say with, Mercury and Capricorn ruling that south node is if things were seeded into our consciousness during the south node in Libra, and now we're meant to Virgo-like improve upon it through solutions, we can deduce that maybe it's around the ways in which we relate to others. And so when we think of Capricornian conditioning and Saturn is in Pisces wanting to dissolve so a new structure of consciousness can occur on a collective level, we have to really look at the conditioning of victimization. And it's something I've been pondering so much lately. I had a really good conversation with Stacy Pazur. I actually wish she could have been on here. But we were talking about Virgo, and I had, some things come up personally. And what I realized is that it is so nuanced. We usually think of, oh, if I'm taking Capricorn responsibility for this, this, and this, that we're not in victimization, but it is so nuanced that really, if you are in, and I'm thinking about this on a collective level, if we are sitting as a collective complaining, Virgo, about what's wrong and how it needs to be fixed, but we're not finding a solution. We are depending on someone else to do the solution for us. That is the epitome of victimization. And so it's really speaking to this dynamic of how, on a collective level, the people are meant to take accountability for this dynamic and come up with solutions and not be dependent upon government systems. And that kind of goes back into Pluto and Aquarius, right? The collective, the community coming up with things. Uranus and Taurus in this chart, retrograde, how we share resources, where we've over-identified with the values that perpetuate victimization on a collective level. And then the need to really heal these dynamics. And that's through doing Saturn and Pisces, confronting the absolute truth of the reality of the situation that we're finding ourselves in, where with the south node of Libra, we didn't do anything about the extremes. And so now we might be presented with crisis in order for us to come together collectively and find a solution, even if that is not dependent upon Capricorn, a different authority. And so that's something that I really see in this chart. I see also with Jupiter retrograde, how this type of thinking could be magnified right now in order for us to liberate from it. And, yeah, I think I'm going to stop right there. I could go on, but yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you, everyone, so much. That was wonderful. That reminds me, Jordan, of a quote that Jeffrey gave, and bear with me, it's been a long time, and I have to paraphrase, but he said in the late 90s, because I was studying with him during the 90s up until about the millennium. He said the evolutionary change of the future will not come about through mildness or meekness or wishful thinking. He said it will come about, the next one, great evolutionary change will come about by great necessary evolutionary intent. And if I can find his exact words, are much better than mine, but he said it's going to be crucial that we realize that that evolution is going to proceed with us or without us. And it's good if we do the work and not just hand it over to someone else, because we have tremendous change coming upon us starting this year without any doubt. So I'm going to try to turn the page here. Let's see if I can get it to work. Bear with me a moment, folks. For some reason. Okay. So moving right along to Neptune going to Aries on March 30th, 2025. It's interesting that it's close to the vernal equinox, and it will join a stellium. Look at that stellium in Pisces and Aries that include the North Node. This marks the beginning of a whole new evolutionary cycle for Neptune. If that's not enough to, encourage revolution of consciousness and revolution of the people and revolution in our hearts and minds, so to speak, and just learn to speak up and create great effective change, I don't know what. And I remember, again, Jeffrey saying that when you have some sort of a repeating theme where Neptune is going to Aries and it's so close to the vernal equinox, and also in March of 2039, when it ingresses again, or when it changes again to Taurus, that will be very close to the vernal equinox. And Jeffrey said these signatures give the initial signature weight. They give it weight. So this is a weighty signature indeed. Mars, the planetary ruler of the ingress, will be in Cancer, approaching opposition to Pluto, which will be exact on April 25th, 2025. We are birthing the capacity for the possibility of a higher intelligence and self-awareness for sentient beings. We're becoming very, very, very sensitized. And when I say sensory awareness, I mean just that. We're starting to feel, I believe, as human beings on a much deeper and higher level than we had before. And we're doing it together. Pluto and Aquarius. So we're sensing a higher intelligence, a higher self-awareness. Not everyone, of course, but it is available to us from the cosmos for not only humans, but for sentient beings and all of nature. We are birthing a new consciousness. I was studying with Zach Bush, the medical doctor that I quoted at the beginning of this presentation, and he says we're becoming conscious of the very breath of nature, and that comes about through meditation and dreams and epiphany and revelation and being in nature. And with Neptune moving to Aries, I think it's going to come in spades. It's going to really hurry up, and we're going to be sensitized and wake up and get those downloads and those revelations a lot easier. So even as hundreds of organisms go extinct every day, they are passing on new genetic material to the biosphere. And these are Zach's words. But in their passing, they will assure the survival of a mutating species or organism. This is the ultimate transformational power of the ultimate water sign, Neptune, or nature, because Neptune and nature are synonymous. And the preservation of life on Earth. New species, new adaptation from the dream of a passing life form that assures the survival of life. So nature is conscious. We're becoming super conscious. And nature, even with its dying life forms like old vegetation, for instance, when it's dying, it passes or it throws its genetic material by seed back into the earth to create a new species. And nature is so much more intelligent than we are, but we're starting to, I think, join hands with her with Neptune through Pisces and now ingressing to Aries, things are starting to take action and take form, and thought is beginning to become evident and real and mobilized, and we're beginning to really create as human beings. I'll just leave this here. These are Zach's words. He's an environmentalist and a humanitarian as well as a medical doctor. But the threshold between Neptune and Aries, ruled by Mars, is the most potent step where life's longing for itself takes a new form, identity, and instinctual survival. So we're really waking up on a very instinctual level, no doubt about it. And it's going to be interesting. It's not going to be tough, but it's going to be interesting. Imagine the next step in self-awareness of all life forms. There's a higher intelligence that's going to unfold that's behind all of it, which is the ability to be conscious and co-create with Mother Nature. So Neptune's ingress to Aries will be March 30th, 2025, and it will be for 14 years. And Neptune has been referred to as a birth canal. The Neptune to Aries has been referred to as a birth canal, and that's the same as you can see that in the wheel between the 12th and the first houses. There's a lot shaken. Something is being birthed right now. We are collectively and individually culminating a Piscean lesson and rebirthing ourselves into a new conscious of healing and opportunity to adapt. Let's see here. This is an opportunity to emerge from seeming chaos, because Neptune has been in its home sign of Pisces for 14 years. Seeming chaos, seeming division, and mass polarization to new perspectives and hope and understanding. Pluto's polarity point is 0 degrees Leo, which is approaching, there's a typo there, sorry, conjunction with Neptune's planetary north node of 11 degrees Leo. And that would be right about here. Right now, Mars is at about 23 degrees of Cancer, and Neptune's north node is right here. It's 10 degrees Leo. Out of chaos births new creation. That's a quote by Bernadette Brady, Pisces, sun sign Pisces. And Neptune is a planet of dissolving old perceived barriers and surrendering to higher universal truths. And it may not be easy, but it's definitely worth the trip, worth the journey. New births and realizations can be jarring, but we, along with our environment, and yes, plants evolve as well, and they are sentient and they are conscious, have been absorbing powerful melatonin for the past 14 years due to the quality and nature of our sunlight, coming to Earth and penetrating our frontal lobes and affecting our pineal glands, enough to spur us on to new frontiers. So we're very much fueled by melatonin right now, and we're coming out of a sort of a dream state to a waking state where action is going to take place, and we're going to be compelled to speak up and act up. Yeah, that means, demonstrations, marches, whatever you want to look at it. But now is the time for the political activist, and that's for sure, coming from the dream of the past 14 years of something's got to change. So adequate sleep, meditation, and downtime and time spent in nature will be absolutely vital. And Jeffrey really stressed that. He said, and thank you, Michelle, for talking about the moon in Gemini squaring the nodes, because Jeffrey said if you get too much Gemini energy, that you can lead to a nervous breakdown. So he taught us to meditate. And interesting that Neptune's ingress to Aries this century will take place close to the equinox. I already said that. And also the ingress of Saturn to Aries will take place close to the vernal equinox, birthing a brand new evolutionary cycle in consciousness and humanitarian activism. Okay. So, let's see, I've got the wrong place here. Bear with me a moment. Don't know what happened. But Neptune stands for the ultimate meaning that we give to life. And here again is the stellium, and this is a chart with the nodes in it. So here we have a stellium of Neptune conjunct the sun, conjunct Chiron, conjunct the moon in Aries. This coming up ingress of Neptune to Aries is a doozy. We also have Saturn in Pisces, which will ingress to Aries. I believe it's in May, Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's in May. Pisces and its ruling planet Neptune is the archetype of unworldly and internal brilliance, discovery, and artistic, scientific, and universal genius. And we all have genius, but Pisces and certainly Neptune in Aries is going to bring that out in a lot of people. It's going to make it evident. It's going to say, hey, look at me. Once recognized and observed, observation, the corresponding signatures in a chart can be recognized, correlation, and realized. This takes practice, reverence, and an open mind, but it's something that Jeffrey really stressed is observation. What's going on? What's happening? And then look at the chart and correlate what's happening. That reverence to find healing revelation stems from the universal truth that the earth is our mother, the sky is our father, and we are born to eternal union with them by a spark from beyond, from the universe. And again, I just want to stress that Pluto's polarity point is approaching Neptune's Neptune's north node at 10 degrees Leo. Okay. Let me see if I can find my place. Bear with me a moment. Okay. This is Albert Einstein, and he said, we are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. This man represents Pisces like none other that I can even think of. He stands for genius and seeing beyond the veil and really understanding and caring and emoting what the songs of the spheres have been trying to teach us for years. And to back up what I said about Redwood earlier, what he said, astronomy is real, and it prodded him to give that coming together lecture in early January. People that use astrology and understand it are allowed to open up and understand the universe a lot better, a lot easier. And that Aquarian frequency of astrology, Aquarius and Uranus rule astrology, really helps enlighten one and open up the mind. And of course, Albert Einstein is the father of the theory of relativity. Toward the end of his life, he is quoted as saying to questioning students and people who were looking for wisdom, all he said is all is relative. And that's really something to ponder, because it's true. Tom Petty's chart, I worked on Tom Petty's chart for 2 years. I was absolutely obsessed with it. And I belonged to a group of psychics and mediums, and there were two very prominent people, very believable people who said that he came to them after his death and gave them information. And I looked into it and I studied it, and I do believe that they're telling the truth. He has Libra. He's a Libra sun in the 12th house. So this is a very balsamic chart. He also has Venus right there, the lower octave of Pisces, or the Venus, the lower octave of Neptune, and of course Gemini applying to that sun, right near the birth canal, so to speak. So it's a very balsamic chart. He's finishing up a lot in this lifetime, and finishing up a lot of what you might call karmic ties or karmic debt. As Jeffrey intimated, the expression of Pisces Neptune in a chart showed the inclination towards spiritual epiphany, genius, and understanding of the profundity of all natural processes, which can be interpreted in a variety of individual ways. There's no one way, and that's why I love the quote, all is relative. It depends on who you are and how you see things. As the nature of our personal reality is not uniform or common, that's a hard one to grasp, but we're all going to wake up in different ways. The North Node is in Pisces. And so what we see and know and can relate to is relative to our relationship to the world all around us. Something that Jeffrey went into, saying that we learn best by just observing the natural world, and then we can look at the chart, or we can look at the skies and study what's going on. Tom Petty wrote songs from dreams and premonitions. He wrote about his mother who came to him and talked to him and prayed with him after her death. He could see and feel the subtle energies in the realms of existence all around us that others don't understand. So here's a very Piscean chart, and of course he has a North Node in Pisces as well. This is a Civil War chart, and you're gonna have to enter. I'm not seeing your pictures on the screen, so please cut me off if I go too long, Sue or Robin.
Actually, I think Redwood said that he's got probably about 15 more minutes. So, do we want to switch over to the charts that he
Yeah,
brought
sure.
in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, maybe we could all do I'd like to hear everyone's on Neptune and Aries. I had like a brief thing to add to that.
Okay,
Really
let's move to that.
your intro on that, and then I wanted to hear what Michelle and Jordan have on Neptune and Aries too.
Sounds good.
Um, that I was just gonna say, like I just been thinking about how we're leaving this 14 years of Neptune and Pisces, and it's like these 14 years have been a time period where, um, our relationship to technology has completely changed how we live, right? Like we weren't carrying around these devices and like having the center of our lives be these, cell phones and smartphones and the connection to the world um, and the amount of media and it's just like what what can entertain us and keep us entertained and keep us connected with people through technology, and how much like anything that you can imagine, can be created at least in like video, right? And then we can watch it. So it's just fascinating to think about Neptune going into Aries because um building off of what Marty said, I think like the whole collective consciousness is now going to be vibrating with this frequency of now's the time to take action. And I think like the question is, well, what action is that? you know and it's different for everybody, obviously. Like we all have this different concept of the urgency of what needs to be done, but I feel like Neptune and Pisces, like I'm like it brought so many beautiful things and magical things, but also like it almost feels like it's been like a sleep pill or something, like we've all been drugged for the last 14 years and we're coming out of a haze, and like suddenly it's like holy shit, like we gotta like do something, and so I don't know, that's kind of like my little take on it. And I think like you can see a lot of that disassociation from society, and it's not just in, it's all over the globe. I think on a lot of levels, people are, and so it's going to be really interesting to see what it means for people to be engaged and to take an action. So, um, as in some cases, as scary as it could be, I think it's also like you've got a lot of people who've just been checked out, and like, what are they going to do? Like, what, like when they decide it's time to take action. Um, and I'm just going to stop there for now, so we have a chance to hear.
Very well said.
Jordan, do you want to go first?
Michelle?
Yeah,
Jordan?
Michelle, you can go if you want, or it doesn't matter. Okay. Something that I have thought about with Neptune and Aries being ruled by Mars in Cancer during this time, while it's trining Saturn, is one, I think Saturn and Pisces, which is trying to finish this up, and it's being ruled by Neptune and Aries, is like where we can be confronted a bit with. Pisces has this energy of not realizing that something's happening whenever it's happening. Sometimes, it can go where you understand everything and it's a spiritual experience and oh my gosh, and then on the flip side it's like, wow, I didn't even recognize, or we didn't even recognize this. And I think with that trine to Mars, which is ruling Neptune, and Neptune is ruling Saturn, it made me think of, Marty, how you said that, Pisces into Aries is the birth canal. Well, if that's the birth canal, Neptune and Aries being ruled by Mars is the ring of fire that women experience as they are pushing out a child, right? Where you're like, oh my God, this is full throttle. I feel everything right now. You feel maximum pressure, and then there's a release. And I think whenever we are looking at Saturn being ruled by Neptune, trining Mars, Neptune's ruler, it's like there can be a release that's experienced, but we have to go through the ring of fire a little bit. There has to be that maximum pressure for those areas of where maybe we didn't understand what was going on, or maybe we were a little bit too Pollyanna, or, we didn't even see it, right? Pisces, it was hidden. That something can be exposed during this time for us to have the birthing that is really necessary on a collective level. So that is what I wanted to speak to.
That's wonderful, Jordyn. Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I think that's such a fun example, Jordyn. As I've had 3 water births, and I definitely can tell you that when you're in the water, there's a lot less of an actual ring of fire. Like it's still happening. Um, but I've been looking at this ingress and thinking several things are very significant here. One is the placement of Mars, which happens to be mirroring the full moon that we're having right now, today's full moon. Two is the occurrence conjunct a new moon in Aries with Chiron. So there's like a collective healing theme. And several of the things that our culture or society, maybe these are only in the United States, but I only have this perspective because this is where I live. The rise of Christian nationalism, the rise of deaths from fentanyl, the rise of, fires and water tragedies. So environmental crisis, like these are all things that push people to their edge of vulnerability, of meaning, of psychological and emotional rationality, right? I've recently seen a friend who lost a child because of an overdose of a fatal combination of fentanyl and another drug, which was designed to make it look like the kid was getting MDMA, which is a feel-good ecstasy drug. Like that to me is a very prime example of Neptune, end of Pisces, Neptune entering Aries, where we actually will enter into a state of realization of what the real crisis is because of the loss of power and because of the emotional vulnerability. And I see that very deeply connected to this Mars relationship, in that we're aware of it now. We're seeing signs now. If we have our pulse in reality, we can be concerned about these things now. We can be worried about, well, how's that going to affect, my family, my community, the world. But I think that the ring of fire sobering is kind of the same. It's a great example because when a woman hasn't had a baby, her first baby, right? This is my 4th, so I'm doing this video with a 4th baby on my lap. When you haven't had a baby, you don't really know what to expect. Yeah. You don't know how full on it is. You also don't know how much it hurts, but then the moment it's over, you're like with this thing that you have to take care of, right? I think that really is like what this ingress is. We don't know what we're getting ourselves into. We don't know how much this evolutionary transition is going to hurt. But once we have it, we will be like, whoa, okay, this is a whole thing that we have to deal with. Keeping alive. We have to, and because Pluto's in Aquarius and Mars is moving back towards the polarity point, what we're dealing with is actually reckoning with what is it like to keep humanity alive? Like a literal, how do we keep humankind going? Because the way we've been living has been completely unsustainable emotionally, financially, energetically, to the planet, to the people, to the animals, to the everything. And now we're struck with the real reality. Once the head is born, you can't stop the whole thing from coming, right? It's just how it works. This is how life does life. And this is how evolution does evolution. I loved Marty's quote earlier because evolution is not voluntary. The Pluto desire is whether our resistance or cooperation is involved. That's the bottom line, and so it's going to happen. Evolution is going to happen no matter what. Right, buddy? Yeah. Um, just like the baby's going to be born, eventually. Um, but a lot of the times when we're pregnant with something, we can be more in the fantasy of what it's going to mean and how it's going to feel and how great it's going to be. And I really think that Neptune and Pisces is like that. We've been living a lot in a fantasy, fantasy money, fantasy realities. Movies became really big, celebrity culture, all these different things that I'm not judging them, I'm not damning them at all. But the rise of them has clouded our judgment and awareness of each other as human beings, of like our very vulnerable humanness and how much we need each other and how we really can't live this way. And because of that, I think on a collective level, we're going to be struck with some crisis of awareness that is like an Aries initiation, a chironic initiation, one that comes with each person kind of taking their wound or their gift or their, awareness. And with Mars and Cancer, it is very much like a social justice thing. Like once you get your stripes, then you got to go do your action in the world. And that's kind of what this says to me.
Do you hear me,
Thank you.
Sue? Go ahead, Redwood.
Oh, just thank you, everybody. That's really beautiful. Thank you.
Redwood, yeah, and thank you, Michelle. Redwood, do you want to go to your slide next of your Uranus and Gemini?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do one last thing.
Okay, I'll get to that in just a
few
moment, but I want to say thank you, everyone. At this point, we're not done yet, but Michelle, we've been pregnant for a long time, haven't we? 14 years. Okay, it's time to take care of the baby. Okay, let's get to the chart for you, Redwood. See if I can get that to come up. Bear with me a moment. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I was going to backtrack too on when Michelle brought up the moon and Gemini square the nodes. I had not even caught that, and that totally fits with this whole questioning and doubt piece in terms of the process of faith and having a crisis of faith, the whole mutable cross being activated. The thing on this chart I thought was really fascinating to me, which I'll just say that, Uranus enters into Gemini here and Venus is right there. And Uranus and Venus's north nodes have been in a conjunction in Gemini for hundreds of years now, the heliocentric nodes. So I've noticed that just in really brief, we started 2,000 years ago. And if we go 2 millennium back, the north node of Uranus was in Gemini then, but Venus hadn't gone in. And since that happened, a few centuries into that first millennia AD or Common Era, the north node of Venus goes into Gemini, and then two things that happen in the 1400s is one is that there was an exact conjunction of the north nodes of Venus and Uranus in Gemini in the 14th century. And then the other one was the Neptune-Pluto conjunctions began happening in Gemini. And this kind of kicked off this whole era of science and the age of reason and discovery and Renaissance and this progressive acceleration of language, communication, ideas, technology, and that all accelerated dramatically in the second Neptune-Pluto conjunction in Gemini in 1892, 1893. And so I say all that because I was thinking, it's like we're actually in more of like the age of Gemini, as well as we're in the age of sub-age of Virgo and entering into the age of Aquarius. And I think the proof that we're in the age of Gemini is everyone says that we're in the age of information. So like we're even saying it, but like we're not seeing it as this Gemini thing. And like Marty's got these slides back to the Civil War and the start of the United States, and one of the common threads with all of those is this Uranus in Gemini. And what maybe a lot of people don't know is that it also transits its north node in Gemini. So I say all that to say that there's this, to me, like the fact that this is what I call the great acceleration. Uranus is going to be in Gemini. It's going to eventually hit its north node. It's going to be trine Pluto and Aquarius. And then we've got this whole, like Neptune and Saturn in a sextile between them. So it's just like greasing the wheels for so much change. Just recently, fellow astrologer friend Gray Crawford is doing like a new podcast thing. And he had a astrologer who's been in the Olympia community for forever, who's been an inspiration to us, Rosie Finn. And she just had a book out that she's been working on for 20 years. And the whole premise of the book is this, her correlation to Pluto being out of bounds and the periods of the greatest revolution and change on the planet. And in her research in 2025, it's a great book. Rosie Finn's the author, and I'm spacing on the name. It's something like something with Persephone's in the title. But
Persephone Revolution, I think.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I'll put a link in the description of the video to it. And he did the YouTube video. I'll put the YouTube video in the description as well.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sue. Yeah. So, I had the chance this summer to, actually on my brief summer vacation, was with Rosie Finn and a couple other astrologers. And we had a chance to catch up and go over, compare notes, so to speak. And the fascinating thing was we were both predicting the exact same thing for different reasons. Hers with this Pluto out of bounds cycle, and I'm looking at, this Uranus in Gemini, its north node, the trine to Pluto and Aquarius, and then the whole sextile in between. And, like back to Marty mentioned the thing where it's like, when you have these things compound and repeat, you really have it emphasized even more, so that's why I was like, to me, 2025 is the start of this great acceleration of reform and revolution and change. But then we kind of have this like slushing back into the other world with all the Pisces, and we're not fully in it yet. So it's like starting, but also it's going to be a big mix. Yeah, I think it's really building up. But this will be a very fascinating year, of course, to start to see what, and just to build off of what everyone's saying, like what is getting birthed? What's the new thing that's going to come through? And then how do we deal with it when it happens? I mean, it's happening now through a lot of different crises, but I think we're going to see, more. The 2020s started out, in a very dramatic way, and there was like no going back, a Pluto-Saturn conjunction on their nodes, like Pluto metamorphosis, like you can't go back, like we can't go back to how it was before the 2020s. And so here we are starting the second half. So I'll just leave it at that. And I'm going to be able to listen for a little bit to y'all before I got to go. Thank you so much.
I'll just say real quickly, and then we'll hand it to Jordan or Michelle. But I love that, Redwood. And if you look at this chart, I can't find my cursor or my highlighter. I don't know how to do that. But if you look at Uranus in Gemini, conjunct Venus in Gemini, that's a very profound self-love signature, like take care of yourself and then you can take care of everyone else. But it's very profound that we need to really wake up and take care of number one. But also I wanted to point out, it's amazing to me that Jeffrey Green had Uranus in Gemini, retrograde, conjunct the North Node. And this was in 1948, I believe. I'm not sure of the year. But yeah, they're conjunct. And Uranus is just new phase past the North Node in Gemini. And interestingly enough to me, I did a chart on David Bowie too. I studied him for about 2 years because I'm kind of a compulsive. And he had a very similar chart to Jeffrey's because he was born a month apart. So he had Uranus in Gemini conjunct the North Node in Gemini as well. And that signature, as far as I know, is the most high-minded signature that I've ever come across. It's a huge antenna, and it's getting information from the cosmos, and we all know who David Bowie was, and we all know who Jeffrey is. So that's quite profound. And then Redwood had pointed out also that Uranus in this chart, in this ingress to Gemini, is conjunct its own North Node in Gemini. And then if you look down at Mars in Virgo, it has just, actually, let's look at Gemini in Leo. It's 11 degrees, and it's right on the Neptune North Node. The way that I read that very quickly is that the Neptune North Node in Leo is our passionate nature and how we feel from the heart and how we create from the heart and how we wake up and rebirth ourselves into the incredible, infinitely creative beings and co-creators with God that we are. And it all comes from the consciousness of the human heart and consciousness gravitating from the head to the heart. I will stop there and let somebody else comment. Jordan?
I can go, and then maybe Jordan next.
Michelle?
Sure, yeah, what I find interesting about the Uranus entrance into Gemini is that it is very much, at least from the perspective of this chart is very loud for the individual's voice and opinion. You know, we have Moon in Sagittarius, freedom, self-expression. What's the most important thing to a Sagittarius? Authentic emotional honesty, right? If we're not free to be who we are, created to be, then how then can we live, right? We have Jupiter and the Sun, who will both be past their first square to Saturn and Neptune, freshly in Aries. We have Mars moving towards its first crossing of the South Node in Virgo. So there's a purification process of all the ways in which the individuals sort of doubt themselves, right? And if we imagine what would it be like to kind of amplify the mind of humanity and then make it loud and louder and more, creatively expressive. To me, that's what this chart reflects. A heightened period where individual self-expressionism, I don't know, there was like the Renaissance era in art, right? We had all these different eras. We had the Renaissance painters, and then that gave way to the expressionist painters. And we are in a social media um, reality where I notice, you know, I just think of something and then all of a sudden there's a reel on my Facebook and it's somebody who's very professional at speaking their mind about the thing that I thought about. I'm like, I don't know how that happened. That's really weird. You know, how do they know I have a mom pooch? You know, can you stop that? Can you make it stop? You know, but to me, it is reflective, like as, and there's a quickening of the amount of information that we can take in. Like the reels get shorter, there's 30 seconds, you know, there's only so much captioning it can do, right? There's only so much information that we can take in. And for anyone who's ever had, you know, a spiritual experience where you felt like you were in a flow state of receiving downloads of information from source, creator, God, your guides, whoever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, anyone who has experienced that can tell you that one, it changes the wiring in your nervous system permanently forever, even if the state of information receptivity changes, right? Even if the flow of information. Two, it totally teaches you that you have to become grounded, like you got to figure out how to walk in the world, because it heightens your sensitivity to that which is not right in the world. You know, like whenever I've had those experiences, I wouldn't be able to eat processed food or sugar for days, weeks. But I noticed the moment I did start eating sugar, man, it changed my brain chemistry very quickly, right? It changed the flow of information very quickly. So I think that this particular phase that we're moving into with Uranus, and there is a whole generation that's turning 84, right, who will be having that Uranus opposition. And there are elders who have already seen what it's like to have Uranus in Gemini, but not trine Pluto. And that's the difference, right? This is real acceleration of the soul's aptitude towards information and consciousness on a deeply emotional, psychological, and individual level. That's the way I interpret this. Jordyn.
Thank you. Yeah, the way that I'm looking at this is, I mean, Gemini is duality, it's choices as well. Whenever you're figuring in Mars and Sag, you know, both being ruled by that Mercury and Leo. So it's whatever comes up for each one of us or for the collective in general, there's going to be a need for discernment. Virgo, you know, Pisces kind of energy around what do we do with that information? Are we going to do it with Mercury and Leo and the natural expression conjunct Neptune to get on track with more universal, timeless ways of connecting with consciousness, how we spread the message to benefit everyone else, or are we going to do it in more of a distorted expression where it's not about co-creation for everyone? It's about this feels good for me, and so I'm going to do it this way because I'm so rooted in this. And so, yeah, this to me is really like symbolizing and reflecting how are we going to discern what information to use, how we're going to use it, and in what ways we're going to use it. So yeah, that's, I have kiddos downstairs cooking, so I'm a little kind of, you know.
Jordyn, that's incredible, and Michelle as well, and Redwood, with that Mars in Virgo conjunct the South Node, this is a time of tremendous discernment because we're seeing two camps, them and us, you know, politically and certainly in the philosophical and religious camps as well. And it's, I want to say something. Well, this is a time for tremendous discernment. What do I believe? Absolutely. Individuation as well. But we are on the threshold right now of where we were in 1861, the beginning of the Civil War. We're completely on the threshold of those conditions. And what I can do is either go back to that Neptune ingression to Aries, which corresponds or parallels the Civil War, or we can move on to, I think, Saturn in Aries. What do you want to do?
Maybe do Saturn and Aries because I know that I have to get off of here soon if we
Okay,
don't mind.
here we go. Go for it.
Let's do the Saturn time check.
Go ahead, Jordyn.
Oh, goodness. Well,
Anyone?
I was gonna let someone else speak really quick while I ground.
Redwood, are you still with us? No? Oh,
Yeah, I'm still here.
okay. Whoops.
I was just about to sign off.
Do you want to speak to this real quickly or do you need to go?
Let's see if I have anything come through Saturn and Aries. Gosh, I don't have anything off the top of my head right now, so I think I'm just gonna say thank you so much for. I mean, yeah, there's so much to say on this. It's like I just don't know where to start, right?
So, Sue and Robin, do we want to do part 2 or do we want to try to kind of wrap this up today?
Yeah, we can do a part 2.
Okay, let's do a part 2.
There's so much information, so much going on this year, you know.
Yeah. And we'll leave it at here, and then we'll pick up with Saturn and Aries because that's not until May 25th, I don't think, of this year. And then Saturn and
Fantastic.
Aries, yeah. We'll pick up there because I have plenty more to say, but we are definitely in revolutionary conditions, and you guys are right
Yes.
on. You're seeing so very much the babies in the birth canal.
I love that. Yeah. That sounds great. Thank you so much. I look forward to doing part 2 with you all.
Thank you, Redwood. I love your insights and your revelation.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody, thank you very much.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
we'll see you on the part 2.